Hey, my boy. Here we are, chapter 12. Even as the words left Didrik's mouth, the imp came flying out of the shadows. It squealed as it dug its claws into his face, scrabbling and scratching. Didrik gave a shriek and dropped the sword with a clatter, spinning around the room. Get it off! Get it off! He howled, blood streaming down his face. Jacob and Callista batted at the imp with their fists, wary of hurting Didrik. With each punch, Fletcher felt a flare of dull pain on the edge of his consciousness, but the demon clung on doggedly, emitting barks of rage. Fletcher's anger continued to radiate from him like a roaring fire, filling him with righteous fury. As it reached its zenith, he felt that moment of clarity once again, Didrik's dark blood turning ruby red in his vision. The imp silenced, then opened its mouth as wide as a snake's. Liquid fire burst from the creature's maw, flowing over the side of Didrik's face and setting his hair alight. An unearthly orange glow flared in the cavern as Didrik collapsed. His choked scream cut short when his head cracked onto the marble floor. Jacob and Callista fell to their knees and beat at the flickering flames, yelling Didrik's name. As the imp scampered into Fletcher's arms, he vaulted into the crypt and made for the exit, his heart fluttering beneath his ribs like a caged bird. It was black as a sinner's soul down there, the air stale and ice cold. He ran on, stumbling deep into the bowels of the earth. Clutching the book under his arm, Fletcher's hands brushed along stacks of bones as he felt his way through the darkness, held together by rusting wire and centuries of dust. He knocked a skull from its alcove, his finger catching it in its empty eye socket. It bounced down the corridor, then shattered into grisly fragments. They crunched underfoot as he lurched onward, desperate to get out of there. The air was stifling, and Fletcher felt he was suffocating with each dust-laden breath. The demon was not helping matters, digging its claws into the fabric of his chest and hissing in displeasure. After what felt like an eternity, his shin cracked painfully into a stone ledge. He groped forward and found another. Relief flooded through him as he realized he had found what must be the stairs to the chapel. He reached above and felt the flat surface of another stone tablet. With colossal effort, he heaved it upward and sideways, sending it to the floor with a crash. The dim glow of the moon was glorious as it shone through the chapel's broken windows, bathing Fletcher in silver. He gulped down lungfuls of fresh air, grateful to be out of that death trap. Yet, even as he began to relax, he remembered what had just happened. He needed to get back to Burden as soon as possible. He would know what to do. Fletcher ran through the dark, using the moonlight to guide him down the goat path. He was sure that the others would not be far behind, probably carrying Didrik with them. He would have 10 minutes at most before the word got out. If the guards heard that one of their own had been attacked, whatever the circumstances, it was unlikely Fletcher would live long enough to stand trial. Even if he did, with Casper's connections, he wouldn't get a fair hearing, and the only two witnesses would have no problem lying. The village was silent as a shadow. Everyone was asleep in their beds. As he jogged up to the main gates, he was overjoyed to see the gatehouse above lay empty. One of his attackers must have skipped their shifts to hunt him down. The forge was lit by the soft glow of coals, smoking gently as they burned themselves out. Burden was asleep in the wicker chair, in the exact same position he had been when Fletcher snuck out. There was no time to waste. He needed to escape. The thought of leaving Pelt cut him to the core, his heart clenching at the notion. For a moment, he could see the life of a vagrant ahead of him, wandering from town to town, begging for scraps. He shook the thoughts from his head, one thing at a time. With a heavy heart, Fletcher shook Burden awake. "What is it?" he slurred, slapping at Fletcher's hands. "I'm sleeping. Wake me in the morning." Fletcher shook him again, harder this time. Wake up! I need your help. There isn't much time, Fletcher said. Come on! Burton gazed up, then started as the curious imp dropped from Fletcher's shoulder onto his chest. What the hell is that? He yelled, leaning as far away from it as possible. The demon squawked at the noise and gave a half-hearted swipe at Burton's beard. It's a long story, but I'll have to make it quick. You should know, I'm going to have to skip town for a while. Fletcher began, picking up the imp and laying it on his shoulder. It curled around his neck and emitted a soft purr. He spoke as quickly as possible, skipping the details, but making sure Burton understood all the facts. In the retelling, Fletcher realized what an idiot he had been to walk through the center of the village where anyone could have seen him. When he had finished, he stood there woodenly, hanging his head in shame as Burton rushed around, lighting a torch and then packing things into a leather satchel. Burton only had one question. Is he dead? He asked, looking Fletcher in the eye. I don't know. He hit his head pretty hard. Whatever happens, his face will be badly burned. They'll say I attacked him with the torch, lured him to the graveyard, then tried to kill him. I've let you down, Burton. I've been a fool, Fletcher cried. Tears welled in his eyes as Burton handed him the deep satchel, the same one he had used to transport the swords to the elven front. He threw the book into the bottom with a sob, wishing it had never come into his possession. Despair seemed to be crushing his heart like a vice. The big man put his hands on Fletcher's shoulders and gripped them, sending the demon skittering to the floor. Fletcher, I know I've never told you this, but you're neither my apprentice nor Burton. You're my son, Fletcher. Even if we do not share the same blood, I am proud of you, prouder than ever tonight. You stood up for yourself and you have nothing to be ashamed of. He gripped Fletcher in a bear hug, and Fletcher buried his face in his shoulders, sobbing. I have some gifts for you, Burton said, brushing tears from his cheeks. He disappeared into his room and came back holding 2 large parcels. He shoved them down into Fletcher's satchel and gave him a forced smile. I was going to give you these on your 16th birthday, but I best give them to you now. Open them when you're far away from here. Oh, and you're going to need protection. Take this. A rack of weapons lay against the far wall. Burton selected a curved sword from the back, where the rarer items were kept. He held it up to the light. It was a strange piece, one that Fletcher had never seen before. The first third of the blade was the same as any sword, a leather hilt followed by 4 inches of sharp steel, but the next part of the sword curved in a crescent like a sickle. At the end of the curve, the sword continued with a sharp point once again. You've no formal training, so if you end up in trouble, well, let's not think about that. This sickle sword is a wild card. They won't know how to parry it. You can trap their blade in the curve of the sickle, then move in past the guard and hit them with the back edge of it. The point is long enough for stabbing, so don't be afraid to use it in that way too. Burton demonstrated, swiping the sickle down and to the side, then bringing the back edge up at head height and stabbing violently. The outer edge of the sickle is curved like a good axe head. You can use it to split a shield or even chop down a tree if you need to. Far better than any sword could. You can take a man's head from his shoulders with a good backswing. He handed the blade to Fletcher, who'd strapped it to the back of his satchel with a leather belt. Keep it oiled and away from the damp. Because of its shape, it won't fit in a conventional scabbard. You'll have to get one made when you get a chance. Tell the blacksmith it's a standard size khopesh. They will know how to make one if they know their trade, Burton said. Thank you. I'll do that, Fletcher said gratefully, stroking the leather pommel. As for that demon, keep it hidden, Burton instructed, peering into the imp's amber eyes. You'll never pass for a noble, nor should you try to. Even if someone hasn't heard about what happened here, it's best to avoid attention. Fletcher gathered the demon in his arms and examined it, wondering how exactly he would keep the unruly creature out of sight. Suddenly, the bells began to toll, their brassy knells reverberating in the streets outside. Even with the bells clamoring, Fletcher heard distant shouts down the road. Go, but not to the oven front. That's where they'll expect you to make a run for. Head south to Corsalum. I'll bar the forge's door, make them think you're still in here. I'll hold them off as long as I can, Burden said, shoving him out of the forge and into the cold night air. Goodbye, son. Fletcher caught one last glimpse of his friend, mentor, and father silhouetted in the doorway. Then the door slammed shut, and he was alone in the world, but for the sleeping creature around his neck, a fugitive. Well, that's chapter 13. That's crazy. Burden's a real one, though. It's getting really interesting. I hope you had a great day, dude. I know you did well on your test today. I'll see you for the next chapter. Love you.